Welcome, all you truth seekers along the watchtower. Welcome to the machine. Welcome to that deluxe relay Le Chateau in the sky. Welcome to the shipwreck we call Aeon Arcanum. Join us as we fish for lost souls, reveal secrets hidden in silence, and manifest mysteries. We are broadcasting live from the hypostasis of California and Sydney, Australia. Today is Aprilis the 29th in the year of our demiurge 2013. We are proudly dismantling orthodox lies and seducing young virgins one show at a time. This is the AA for your soul, the vibrator for your spiritual clitoris, the Excedrin for your psychic migraine, your rest from the Game of Thrones nightmare. Awaken, O sleeper, rise from your grave, shake off your drunken monkey suit. We are not endorsed or funded by Pharisees and publicans, nor do we accept sacrifice. Our guest today is Sir Johny Bineham, living proof that chivalry is not dead. He's here to slap the Hylic Kool-Aid taste out of your mouth as he informs us about the Cathars. Your ass can belong to that dirty old priest polishing his bishop, but your soul belongs at Aeon Arcanum, the Bermuda Triangle of dangerous ideas. Follow us down the rabbit hole to escape the Inquisition, only to find that the Endura is the only real alternative. Welcome to the illusion where we force-feed home-cooked Gnosis. I'm your host, James, and so it begins again. How are you today, Johnny?
Not as good as you, James, but I'm working on it. Certainly after that introduction, it's a little bit hard to follow. I think you've already got there. A lot of the interview already
a
organized.
lot of the ideas, right?
Very, very original, I must say.
Okay, so what basically, how did you come to be interested in the Cathars? What got you interested in Catharism?
Well, James, my life is pretty much a range of stories. And actually, I was in this club, and the waiter came around and he said, look, that guy over there, he'll buy you a beer. And and if you go over there, he'll tell you what you're thinking. I thought, oh, this is intriguing. So I went over, and he did buy me a beer. And he said, did the waiter tell you? And he said, yeah, the waiter told me that you'd tell me what's on my mind at the moment. So I said, what's on my mind? So actually, he did say what I was thinking. So he said, now you're going to ask me, how the bloody hell did you find that out?
Yeah.
And I said, yes. I said, he said, well, I have a spirit guide. And I asked my guide. My guide told me, and I'm just telling you. And that's the first time I had anything to do with guides or spirit guides.
Right.
So this was my introduction, if you like, to Gnosticism, Catharism, but more than that.
How funny that your story kind of begins with the bar thing, just like mine.
Exactly. So that was a start, and then I got into it. But I must say that, and listening to your program before, that reading into ancient texts of Gnosticism and Simon Magus and the Archons and the Pleroma and all these different things. I mean, it's great for intellectual debate. It's great for intellectual insight. But in actual fact, it just confuses the bloody hell out of you. So it's got more of that. So but I did get involved with my own guide, and my friend got involved very much with his guide, and there was a book created out of that. And there's this. He's wrote down a journal of 10 years, but it's all very, very, what would you call it, down-to-earth, practical stuff.
Right.
And for instance, he said, oh, what about Jesus? Or what about this? And he said, look, don't bother yourself with ancient facts and ancient fictions. He said, he said, what really counts is how you're getting on. How's your health? How are you handling life? How's your spiritual development? He said, the rest of it, he said, it's been and past, it's gone.
Right. Yeah, in the end, that's what really counts. All the other stuff is just something to be interested in.
Well, it is, and it is interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, I've read my share, but and it is interesting. I find it quite interesting.
But even the idea you're talking about right now with the spiritual guide, I've experienced that myself. But the thing is that for Simon Magus, that was the familiar spirit.
Socrates.
Right, Socrates too.
Socrates had that
daemon.
Damien, exactly.
Yeah.
And so even when he went to take poison, the Damien didn't say don't take it. So I thought, well, I've been advised all my life not to do things, and he told me not to do it, so I'm taking it. So,
the Orthodox will call that the Holy Spirit. Or they won't call ours that, but they'll call theirs that.
Yeah, so really I didn't pursue it. I more or less fell into it, and or it pursued me. And then I had this phrase, the Albigensian Crusade, going around. I don't know where it came from. I don't remember reading it. I don't remember seeing it. And I thought, I used to ask people, what's the Albigensian Crusade? And I said, I don't know. Then one day someone said it's something to do with the Cathars. So then suddenly that brought me down the road about 35 years ago towards the Cathars. And so I read up on that, and I related to it, and the various other books, and reincarnation and the Cathars, and a whole. So it's as if things are just out of guidance, or whatever you want to call it. But various paths, even though it's been here and there, and this way and that way, they've always tended to focus me towards it. So my experience is really from life experience, rather than intellectual argument or Gnostic interpretations and so forth. Mine's coming out to pounds, shillings, and pence, or dollars and cents.
Right. That's kind of how mine fell together, actually, too. I still read all this stuff, and I find interest in it. But with me, I had basically just a vision, like a dream,
Okay.
And I had heard a phrase from the Valentin, what they say it's Valentinian, the Gospel of Truth.
Yes.
There's a phrase talking about the beginning being the end and the end being the beginning, and that's what started me off.
Yes.
And then I was reading through it one day, and I saw that. I was like, that was in my dream. And then I kept, getting that, and then I was, sleeping in one night, and then I woke up, but I was like paralyzed. I couldn't move. And I saw a figure sitting in my chair who was the same height as me, same shape, everything. And he was telling me about all the stuff that was going to go wrong in my life, like he already knew. So I had that. And then I even saw myself sitting at the bus stop before. So I've had weird stuff like that. That's mainly what led me towards it, is things like that,
Yeah.
But I read all this stuff just to read it, just to get into it, But you find the same reoccurring ideas,
Yes, that's right.
Within different traditions, right? And so it's not a doctrinal thing, That's why a lot of people, like, if they're going from Orthodoxy to Gnosticism, they can't digest it because they're like, what's the Gnostic doctrine? What's the Gnostic doctrine? And it's like, if we even had one thing remotely resembling a doctrine, it's the idea that there's a spiritual realm.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
That's right. Yeah. Yes. But that's interesting that the fact that you actually saw that, because that vision has evaded me, and yet my daughter once, and I was talking about, because in the Cathars and reincarnation, there's this person had talked about Brandon de Montsever, and I realized that she was my guide, and I was actually having conversations like you and I are having at the moment, and everyday stuff like John, today, the girlfriend at the time I was living with, she said, she went for 3 interviews today and she's got a job. And I said, well, I don't know. So when she came back, and Breda said, she'll ring on Monday. This is pretty down-to-earth stuff. And I told you, and sure enough, there she was. She had a job, and she rang on Monday. So, but the thing is, I'd never actually seen mine. But my daughter, and I was talking to her about it, and I said, I think she's a little old lady with a wrinkled face, deep blue eyes. That was in the book Reincarnation and the Cathars. And she said, no, she's not. She's about 40 years old. She's absolutely beautiful, looks like Janet Leigh, and she's got long blonde hair going down past her waist. She wears dark blue and dark green gowns, which the Cathars did, because they used black originally, and then when the Inquisition started chasing them, they started wearing green. But there's no way she would know it. I said, but how do you know? She said, I can see her standing beside you. So here's that. Wow. And I went to a medium Susie, who I really miss, because when I go there, my mother, my father, everybody who's died, this friend of mine who wrote a book, I went to get some information, and he's there, and they arrive, and and it's just like a big family gathering. But she's also seen my guide, and she said exactly the same thing: long blonde hair, gowns, dark brown. So I've never seen it, but these two people who don't know each other have correlated it.
Right. That's interesting.
But Napoleon actually saw his guide.
Right.
And his guide told him, he mentioned this in his memoirs when he's on the when he was exiled, Saint Helena, I think it was, and he said he saw his guide 3 times, and his guide said, "You have 5 years to implement the rights of man." In other words, liberty, fraternity, and what have you.
Right. Yeah.
And
that's how they talk to you too. That's how mine was. He was telling me what I had to do and all this stuff and what I was going to do wrong. And it's interesting too is when you look into Plato, like you were talking about Socrates, right?
Yeah.
Socrates had this belief that it was like the Atlantean spirits, who had died, like Minerva, stuff like that, coming to you. Now you see that in video games. They have that idea trickled into a game called Assassin's Creed.
Okay, no, I haven't seen it.
It's the dead spirits of Atlantis coming and talking to people. Or the spirits of Atlantis. Maybe Atlantis is the pleroma. Who knows, you know?
Well,
the idea changes from here to there.
Yeah, well, I mean, stuff is coming out every day. I mean, they find archaeologically, scientifically, and even philosophically, there seems to be a gradual meeting, a meeting of the minds, if you like.
Right. Like this collective unconscious.
Well, from the Gnostic point of view, we have no issues with science. We have no science, not bad science that's trying to poison you, but it's a
right. And the word gnosis itself is science.
Yeah,
in English. Knowledge. It becomes science in Latin, right?
Yeah. So I find it's also it's easygoing. You don't have hang-ups with homosexuality. You haven't got hang-ups with this, or black or white, brown or brindle. 3 people he's living with 1 person. Who cares?
Right. Exactly.
You get on together. Do you enjoy life together? You're enjoying your associations.
There's no quibbles over drinking wine and having a good time.
Exactly. And actually, in the book, Henri said, look, there's nothing that is natural. In other words, eating, drinking, toilet, sex, whatever.
Yeah, whatever you got to do, whatever's bodily.
That affects your spiritual involvement. He said, but treat it as if you're passing as an orange, you enjoy the orange, and you move on. He said, this is the point. The point is to keep moving on. Don't get
in a way, even Jesus sees that, because he talks about how you can have your body killed, but they can't kill your will, and
Well, exactly.
All that stuff. Jesus is saying the same thing, and a lot of people they don't see it because they're in their doctrine. They're up in this. They have this list of to-do list of doctrines. Oh, it doesn't fit there.
Yeah, well, I think everybody, religions are everybody with your. No matter what, everyone is given a sleeping pill to a degree when you're born, whether it's Christianity, atheism, Islam, or whatever. It could be believing or not believing. But whatever your family or whatever you're breastfed is basically what you take. And most people spend most of the rest of their lives trying to validate that particular belief.
Right.
And but I saw a movie the other day, The Reluctant Infidel, where this guy, he was a Muslim. He wasn't very strict, but anyway, in England. And anyhow, he realised he was adopted. So he went and he found out. He got his adoption files, and here he was, a solid. He was a Jew, and he's prepared for adoption. So for the first years of his life, he was Jewish. Then he's adopted by Muslims, and so here he is a Muslim. And of course, but the point is, if you're looking beyond it, it just shows you that here's these beliefs that we hold so dear and so strongly, and yet they're just an accident of birth.
Right.
Because if you were adopted out and they say they gave you to a Scientologist, you're going to grow up a Scientologist.
Right, right, exactly.
So, there
it's like a snake that sheds its skin.
Yes, but it's still a snake.
Some never shed their skin.
Yeah, well,
somehow through some freak of nature, right?
Well, someone said it's one thing to be born, whatever you're born into, but he said if you haven't changed by the time you die, well, your life hasn't been very successful.
Right. Well, I always felt like, especially when I came to have divisions and to have things like that, I started thinking, well, man, I've always really been Gnostic because I already had these beliefs. Yeah, I had these beliefs, but I didn't have these experiences. And once I experienced it, I realized, well, that's what I already believed, but now I'm experiencing it. And the other thing is that, well, you're born in, at least in my mind, you're born a Gnostic, and then you're born into this world. Yeah. Right, this world you sleep in, your drunkenness, whatever you want to call it, it's different in every every Gnostic will give you a different metaphor for it, if you will. And that's you fall into this, so you go from your natural state of being, which is essentially a Gnostic persuasion, where there's spirit and flesh, and then suddenly you're basically indoctrinated and set up into this whole whatever you are, Jewish, Muslim, Sikh, Christian, whatever, and you're just kind of bombarded with that, and each group will have some Gnostic leanings, and they take certain things they don't like, and they go, oh well, that's not really true. We're going to be resurrected in the flesh, and we like that better. That sounds good. We like the idea that we can stay in one body forever, and drink all we want and do whatever we want. Depends on what their persuasion is, Yeah,
sure. Yeah,
that's why they came up with hellfire and all those things, so they could scare people.
Well, that's right, and so with neither damnation nor salvation, at least you don't have that rock carrying around on your shoulder.
That's one of the heaviest burdens of being brought up in a tradition like that, is all the guilt.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about the Gnostics and even the early Christians and most of the world, I mean, they the variations, but they believe in reincarnation, and to me that's the only fair system, and the fact that you'll be black, white, brown, and brindle. Everyone will be spend their time as bisexual, trisexual, quadruple sexual. You'll have a chance at everything.
Sexual, whatever they have, right?
Yeah, but you'll be more often poor than you'll be rich. But you'll be male, you'll be female, and the whole point within this, supposedly you're gaining some understanding, and with that understanding you're gaining some involvement. So it's a process we go through, and the religion I feel is a part of that process, and some are ready to break through and others aren't. But most people like their comfort zone, and that often that's your culture, country, and religion. And people feel at home at that, and they say the hardest thing in life to do is actually think and reason for yourself and then discuss it.
Right.
So
yeah,
hopefully
it is.
What we're doing now.
Especially because you have all the shame and guilt that comes with discussing your own feelings and ideas.
Exactly.
Because of you have the whole stigmatization of the society that you happen to be a part of.
Well, the Christian, Muslims, and Jewish, they had that particular belief or affliction that the body ain't that great. There's something unnatural about the body, or evil, or whatever
which is why when you resurrect, you can't have sex in heaven.
There's no problem with that at all. I mean, it's a much you can do what you like, as long as you're not harming another person or harming yourself. I mean, otherwise the world's a great big. Well, and the other thing is too that basically that the life is to be celebrated rather than restricted with various repressive rules and regulations and what have you.
Do you think having a belief in reincarnation adds to the joy of life?
Very much, because obviously, if there is such a thing as reincarnation, then very likely, most probably, that you are the end product of your previous lives or previous experiences.
Right.
And even things like love and learning will transfer over. So if you do love someone extremely deeply, you have put a lot of time into learning some particular thing, that the essence of that will transfer over. And also your loved ones will often transfer over. So that I'm involved with now, I feel each of them have been involved with me, some in Cathar times, others not. But this is a good feeling, rather than this one life is it, and that's it. And also, what I'm doing today, what you and I are learning at the moment, that's not just going to disappear. And even Henry Ford said, he said, life was meaningless to me until I understood reincarnation. He said, all this knowledge that I've possessed, that I've gained and so forth, and insights, to be just totally lost, he said, I couldn't handle that. So when he said I discovered reincarnation, he said, suddenly I was at peace with myself.
Right, and it makes sense because I often find that it's amazing how much a young child can actually seemingly know how to do. The fact that they can gain sensory perception so fast, and they're able to, they mature so fast. It's almost as if they had some kind of previous knowledge.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
often I see that, even with little children, even at work, when parents bring little kids in with them, there's
Yeah.
something like it's like they brought something over with them, and you see that even in the New Testament, the way Jesus cherishes children,
Yeah.
he attaches a significance to them as if they had something that they were more wise than some of the adults, simply
Well,
because they were carrying over that knowledge.
well, they are, and children just tend to be themselves. So there's an honesty about children. They
Right.
don't have they still haven't picked up any genders that they're trying to foist on everybody else. So they're basically just being themselves. There's an
Right.
honesty, and and uh, and that's pretty smart, because not too many people are even prepared to be themselves. Everyone's
Right.
got, not everybody, but so many people have got a public facade that they put on, that
Right.
they because and at home they're just a different person, and they don't
Then you
feel
got
comfortable.
people that won't stand up for themselves too. You
Well,
know.
this is right. So,
Right.
and for some people it's easier than others. Again, some people. A lot of it just boils down to your life experience.
Right. Right.
You know.
Or your previous life experience.
Previous life.
Right.
Exactly. Exactly.
So let's see. What do you think? Let's see. Moving on to more of a history sort of thing. Um,
Sure.
what do you think are the similarities between the Cathars and other Gnostic groups? Any Gnostic group that you find particularly important
Well, the
in
essence of
terms of
Gnosticism,
practice, not
yeah.
just
Well,
belief, practice and belief.
the essence of Gnosticism is basically to understand and think, and you're on your own individual journey, and the fact that you want people to think for themselves means you're going to have a variety of opinions.
Right.
So, and the Gnostics were no different. They had that was another strand of Gnosticism. But
Mm.
the number of things about the Gnostics which really stands out is that I don't know of any other major group, certainly might have been any major uh, spiritual group in history, that actually believed in total unconditional love and actually practiced it. Now, a lot of religions mouth these things about love and this and that, but there's not that much in practice. And even their God has a conditional. If you're a good boy, you'll go here, or good girl, you go there. But if you're a bad boy, a bad girl, you got to go down there. And not just for the weekend, you're down there for eternity. To
Well,
bubble and
even like with the Jewish concept of God, like in Genesis, if we went with Genesis, the first 3 chapters, you have a God who's not only conditional, but he's secret about what his conditions are. He doesn't tell them beforehand.
well,
Cain's supposed to bring one type of offering, Abel brings the other, and he picks them based on condition and favoritism. But in the New Testament, you see the no favoritism in Paul.
and when you think you got it, he changes his mind. So, yeah,
Yeah, right, exactly.
But, so, but with the Cathars, it's very simple. It was unconditional love for
Right.
everybody and everything. So, in essence, they're probably the first environmentalists,
Right.
because they treated animals. It didn't matter what it was. Everything that had a divine spark.
Right.
Mountains, trees, everything demanded respect.
Did
So,
they practice the vegetarianism? Were they
yeah,
vegetarian?
well,
Some of them.
there's a little bit about this. This person said
Hmm.
to this vegetarian friends of mine. He said, "Oh, he said, you're a vegetarian." He said, "Because you don't like eating meat." He said, "I'm a vegetarian." And I said, "You're a vegetarian because you hate eating meat." He said, "No, I'm a vegetarian because I hate vegetables."
That makes sense because you're actually vegetables are living things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Everything on the planet. So when you're choosing to eat that, you're choosing one living thing over another. So yeah,
So
that's
anyway,
very interesting. Very interesting rhetoric.
but anyway, the thing is that it was purely the Cathar clergy that went into, because, and also with the Cathar clergy, you had to have a normal lifestyle beforehand. They didn't take anyone when they were young, of 17, 18, 19 or 20,
Right.
or as a Buddhist when you were a child. Everybody had a normal life, had their normal, they had their children, they had sex, they had this, they had that,
Hmm.
whether they were gay or whatever, it didn't matter. The point is they'd had that background, they'd had life experience, and then when you raised your family, and then if you thought, well, I want to fast track my spirituality,
Right.
then they would become clergy, and then they get in for 40-day fast a year, and they only ate fish because they thought at that time fish didn't reproduce, and they were basically in essence with their meditations and well, some call them the Western Buddhists. They were basically trying to become more spiritual and physical, and it seemed to work because over and over when the Inquisition was burning them, and sometimes at Marmont they burnt 400 of them on one occasion, but many times they burnt 200 or 300 at a time. And one monk said, "Oh, aren't you going to put guards around them?" He said, "No, they're not going to run away." He said, "In fact, they'll run onto the flames." And quite often they'd run on the flames, but there was no screams. Now, this is not the Cathar propaganda saying you didn't feel
pain. You even
pain.
see that in stories with the early martyrs like Polycarp.
Yeah. But anyway, this is
way later.
way later. But the thing is that this is coming from what you call the Cathar enemies. This is the journals of the
if your enemies say something good about you, then you know it's true.
It's probably quite true.
Yeah.
So they did get to a spiritual level, and so it's as they say that it was amor, love, versus Roma, love versus power, and invariably love when you're confronted with a sub AK-47 or a sword, being a loving individual doesn't do too much good.
Right.
You'll
sacrifice yourself.
Yeah, that's right. They're under a little bit of physical violence.
Right.
But they actually put it into practice, and so that made them a really unique group within the history of mankind, because they actually did as they practiced, but they weren't into churches, or marriage didn't matter, or baptism. They were into the quality of your relationships. Baptism, they said, well, they went into original sin in the first place. So they had a lot of very basic things, and there wasn't a great deal of rituals. This endura, they should practice the endura these days, because the endura simply means when it's time to die, you allow the person to die naturally and with dignity.
Right.
And some people, you get a fanatics in every group, and some people took it to an extreme and just starved themselves and committed suicide that way.
Right. Yeah, but that was under certain pressures too. They were under siege and things like that.
Yeah, but that was up to the individual, and sometimes you have an endura whether you like it or not, because there's nothing to eat.
So the endura is different for everybody, just like every Gnostic has his own path.
It's allowing you, when it's time to die, and after you've taken what they call a consolamentum, which is their primary sacrament. Once you've done that, you more or less, from that point onwards, you tend to fast, because you don't start eating meat and various things like that. You can just take water. Another point is to just allow the person to die as comfortable but as natural as possible. Whereas today,
my dad wasn't even a Cathar, and he pretty much did the same thing. He starved himself and just drank water, pretty much. They just do that to alleviate the pain, right?
Yeah.
Right. So they're not taking solid food.
Well, these days you hook up, and and you're, even if you're at death's door, they're trying to revive you. We talk about
I don't
quality
want that
of
done to me.
but there's not much quality of death. This is So,
plus, then you have the Orthodox or Catholic or just all around mainstream Christian sensitivities towards the subject of suicide.
Yeah.
And that may be considered suicide to some people. Which I don't consider that, but some people will,
Well, I told my ex-wife, and I said, I'm an ex-soldier. I said, I've been in a few wars and that. So I said, I think it's fitting that I blow my brains out when I'm ready to go. But I said, I wanted, like the Red Indian, I wanted to decide the day and the time when I want to go. So I'd like a party the night before and see my friends, and I'd also like a party when I arrive. But, and she said, just like you, she said, you're selfish, you're selfish. I said, what are you talking about? She said, who's going to clean up the mess? Who's going to? Oh, I said, okay. I said, I'll get a sleeping pill instead. So I'll do it.
What you do is you call the cleaning services the night before, and then you be responsible. It's like drinking and driving is not responsible, right? So you drink and take a cab. Well, in that case, you call the maid the day before.
So anyway, the thing is, but the essence is, and in fact, you know, in your country, the Red Indian, and sometimes he's a seventh cab going along on their horse. They look up and there's this hill, and there's this lone Indian, and he's got the feathers and he's war paint. I think, what the bloody hell's he doing? And suddenly he charges down, and it's like, hang on, there's 30 of us, there's only one of him, and he charges, and they go, what the hell's happening? Of course, they're so surprised, he even gets in amongst them and kills a few of them, and by the time they shoot him, but the point was, he got up that morning and he said, I'm a warrior. Now, today's a good day to die. I've got to find a to go. But
it's a good day to die.
Go out of my prime,
right.
you know.
Right.
And often he'd charge on horseback, but facing the rear.
Oh, okay. So, okay.
So I don't give a damn about you. You know, I don't care. I'm not even facing you. So the samurai, the same thing. They get up in the morning and they think, might be today, it might be tomorrow.
The harakiri.
Yeah, well, no, but I mean, they before they go out, because the samurai is going to die by the sword, one way or another.
Right.
But he makes peace in the morning. So, well, today it might be the day. I might kill or I might be killed. And once you do that, you put that to the side. The same as a soldier.
It's similar with the Krishnist religion. You know, that strand of Hinduism where they basically they train for death and they decide when they die. They decide their death day. Yeah.
Well, I don't look.
It's similar.
That's making a big deal of it. You know, I think.
Yeah. It's going to a little more of an extreme. Yeah, making a big deal, but they're able to do it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you're training for death by the way of having a party and doing things.
But
like
it's not taboo for them is the main thing. It's not taboo, and they're able to do it, and it's not looked down upon.
Well,
in fact, they celebrate it. They have a celebration where they have all their loved ones come together the day they're going to die, and then they have them part, and then they die.
I think that's great. I think death is to be celebrated. Death, not the dying, but death should be a delight because. Actually, my friend who
it should be delightful. It's got it's painful. You might as well have something delightful going on while it happens.
Well, my friend who had the 10 years with his guide, Henri de Dabors, and got this book out. But anyway, he died, and no one couldn't quite work out how he died. So, but also I needed information because I hadn't actually put this book out, and I needed what happened to his computer and his hard drive. So I went to see Susie, and this guy's name was Jim Callahan. And actually, he was a Trappist monk when he was young, and we were in Korea together. We were fighting. Anyway, I went to see Susie, and it was this my medium, and I opened the door. I said, "Hi, John. Hi, Susie. Oh, Jim Callahan. Who the hell is this Jim Callahan? Oh, give me a break, Jim." She said, "I'd like to say a prayer before we do this." She said, "He's eager, isn't he?" I said, "Oh, that's the guy I came to see." I had 5 questions, and he answered the 5 questions. But no one really knew how he died because he was half on the floor, half off. And so I didn't ask him. I was going to ask him, but he told me. He said, "Oh, when I died," he said, "it was amazing." He said, "I had a bit of a headache." And he said, "I went to lay down, and the next thing I didn't even reach my bed." And he said, I exited through the top of my head. He said, "It was euphoric. It was fantastic." He said, "It was a fabulous feeling." He said, "I would have liked to do it again. It was great."
Yeah.
Then I'm up on the ceiling and I'm looking down. I thought, who's that idiot down there? He's not on the bed. He's not on the floor. I'm looking. He said, "It took me 15 minutes to work it out." That's me. He said, "I'm dead." You know, he had no. He was there. He was there. His consciousness didn't change. Didn't even skip a beat. But the point is, all this is good news. It's not bad news.
Right? Yeah, it's good news. It makes sense though that if you're prepared for it and you have the right attitude towards it, you're going to be. That's enough to be ready for it.
And he said I went up. He said through the tunnel, and he said there was Henri. This is his guide, Henri de Dabors. He said Henri was there to meet me. He said I spoke Occitan, which is the language of the Cathars. He said in the south of France. Languedoc.
So his guide was a Cathar.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
Okay.
And were burnt together. Anyway, basically said, "Well, speaking Occitan." I didn't know I could speak Occitan. Yeah. So the thing is that for every person, your guide will meet you. If you're a young soul, maybe not. But this is not a. This is according to what is it? The Journey of Souls, Destiny of Souls. This Wayne Newton, and he's hypnotized these people, and though it doesn't matter what religion you are or no religion, he said in every single case, your guide has met that person. And he said sometimes it might be a family member if you're young, and then they take you through. And he said in 15 years, not once has Jesus or Buddha met anybody that he's always been your actual guide.
Right.
And so it's interesting that you get one correlation over here against these people who hypnotized over here. And he said they all go through the same process, even though each one has a different an individual situation.
Right. I think that's beautiful too. I mean, I like that whole idea. I believe that's what happens. That's what I believe for a long time.
Yeah, yeah. And
I think that's much more beautiful than all the scary hellfire brimstone crap.
Well, no wonder people don't want to die, trying to last another day longer, another day longer.
Yeah. Right. So they can feed the machine.
I saw a grown man once. We were at a dinner party. He came out and he had cancer, and he was born. He said out, I don't want to die. He was just scared kid. He was an Italian Catholic guy. And obviously he'd done a few naughty things in his life. Haven't we all? Gee, I've done more than my share. I've done a lot for somebody else's share as well. But he was just panicked. He was crying. He was like a little child.
Right. I've witnessed that myself.
Whereas hang on, you're going to die, but hey, it's going to be great.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've seen people right after they're dead, their corpse, had like this painful look on it. They were scared, they were crying, things like that. And then I've seen other people that died with a smile on their face.
Actually, I've got to tell you a story. It was a guy, and I forget his name. He's from New York. He had he has the most beautiful New York accent I've ever heard, and deep, resonant voice. I wish I had his voice. But anyway, he was being interviewed, and by Margaret Throsby here, a very famous interviewer, and he was talking about the very famous photographer who he used to do a lot of gay photographs. He was the first person doing it, and he died, and this other woman died, and this photographer, God, he had an exhibition here about a couple of years ago. He's dead, but he said when he died, and he was there, he said at the time, he said he had an epileptic fit. He said he literally exploded. He said blood came out through his eyes, through his ears, every orifice of his body, blood exploded. And he said, so I don't know what he was feeling. He said, but the death was, he said, there's blood on the wall everywhere. He said, it was just an explosion when the guy died.
Scary.
Yeah. So
that's so scary.
You don't have an epileptic fit when you're...
It's probably scarier for the people around him than it was for him.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, he was in hospital. But then he said he was this other woman, and she was a Buddhist, and she was there, and there was about a dozen people there. She was sitting up in bed, and he said she was just chatting away, and suddenly there was nothing, but there was no transition between, you didn't know she was alive or dead. It was just the most beautiful, peaceful, tranquil death that you could ever imagine. So this guy explained me.
Almost as if she just went to sleep, right?
He just went, and it was just, he said to witness these two deaths was to see the difference between, between how you can die one way and how you can die the other way. So the thing is, but if you have that knowledge that death is a door, and from the Gnostic knowledge or Cathar knowledge, what they call it, there's no, it's not a, there's nothing to fear. In fact, that's the whole point. The whole point of Gnosticism, Catharism, if you really get, if the message and the life experience can really get to you, the end result is you don't worry about anything.
Right.
You don't fear anything.
That's how I am now. Ever since I came fully to this persuasion, I don't worry about anything anymore. I just do it. I just go live my life one day at a time.
The worst case scenario, from most people's point of view, is that you're going to die. But hang on, I don't mind dying.
Yeah.
I've got no problem with it. I've got no problem with you dying. I've got no problem with me dying. I don't have a problem with dying. I can see if you're going to miss somebody, I'd miss my friends and things like that.
But you're going to see them again.
Yeah. But that's right. So it puts a totally different. It's a very pleasant way to live your life.
Right.
It's without fear and this control and these dogmas and doctrines and all of them, but they all tend to repress you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you repress something, it tends to spring back in some other direction, and often in a negative way. So you don't have these depressions, repressions, or whatever that you're carrying around all the time.
Right.
And the other night I was talking to this woman, and we were chatting about something, and she said, "Oh, read the Bible." I said, "Yeah, but if you should read the Bible." I said, "But hang on." All she could say was like a zombie, just read the Bible. I said, "But we're not discussing anything. We're not saying anything. We're not coming to any reasonable conclusion because all she could say is read the Bible." So, well then, so this to me is you've arrived in zombie land, basically.
Right.
There,
It's almost like you abandon that conversation, that initiation through conversation, that dialectic, and then you're kind of off in your own mind, which is a terrible place to be if you're there all the time.
Yeah, and there's no problem with agreeing or disagreeing. It doesn't matter. Yeah. That's fine. There's no problem with being wrong.
Right.
So anyway,
what I found too with conversing with other people of Gnostic type persuasions, people that have the outlook like you have, and I pretty much share your outlook. People like us, we don't have a hard time respectfully disagreeing or agreeing with each other. Whereas when you get people that come from a certain set of doctrines and stuff like that, they are disagreeing all the time.
Yeah, but you're not arguing with them. You're arguing with their doctrine.
Right. Exactly.
What you want to do is have a reasoned discussion with somebody else who's also using his brain.
Right.
So,
right.
To arrive at a conclusion rather than just repeat some particular dogma or doctrine or rule or which tends to be repressing, or they're usually to control in most cases, and I suppose society, religions, and a lot of people, what they do fear is people thinking for themselves, because then you tend to be out of control or out of religion or government control.
Right. What's your take on free will and fate? What do you think of those things? Do you think they're opposed, or are they not opposed, or does one exist and not the other?
Yeah. Well, I think we have both.
Right.
I do believe the Chinese call it yun fin, that there is destiny. There's we have a fate. Before we were born, we had a purpose in life, which we may or may not carry out. But as regards free will, in most cases in our life, in most people's lives, there's not a great deal of free will, because, I mean, if you lose your job and you've got a wife and a couple of kids to support, you don't have much choice and much free will. You've got to get money from somewhere. You either got to get a job, borrow it, or steal it. There's your choices. There's a little free will there. But, at the same time, you can walk down a dark street and there's a parcel on the ground and there's $5,000 in it and there's not a soul anywhere. Believe me, you've got free will.
Right.
What are you going to do? You're going to put it in your pocket. You're going to take it to the police. You're going to do this. Pure case of free will. Now, but even that free will is already, whether you're basically going to put it in your own pocket or hand it in to somebody else, that's probably already been ordained to a degree by, if you're being dishonest most of your life, and quite often, you're probably not going to be honest at that point in time.
Right.
If you've been honest most of your life, and that's the way you tend to live your life, well, it's more than likely that you'll be honest this time. But there's a situation there of free will. I've been in odd cases, an odd case where sometimes in the battlefield, what do? You've got there's a person there, like the story I've told, and this young guy, and this Viet Cong woman in Vietnam, and she was really riddled with shot and shell, and she was dying, and because from this firefight, they took worded whether they're ours or the enemy, put them on a helicopter and took them back, but she was too far gone. So the officer just said, "Oh, look, kill that one, finish them off, because they're going to die anyway." So put them out.
They were in pain. Yeah, put them out of their misery. Yeah. Mercy killing.
And this young guy, he just couldn't do it, and he held the SLR, the rifle there, but the Viet Cong woman, she could see his situation, and she knew her situation, so she got the muzzle of the rifle and she poked it into her mouth, and then he fired it. So that created a lot of problems for this young guy. But where's the free will, and where's the training? And so things can get very involved at times. So in most cases, we don't have a great deal of free will because we've got pressures that push us to go in a certain direction. But a lot of people, because of their free will, say, no, I'm not going there. I'm going to go over here. Right. They make a clear choice. I'm not going to do that.
Right.
And that happened. This guy, he was at the university, and he was with a couple of friends going for coffee. And there was a guy, a young Asian guy, and he had all his books, and he stumbled, and the books fell. This guy turned to help him, and their friend said, no, come on, we're going to have coffee. And he said, oh, I think I should help this guy. Come on, they said, if you don't have coffee with us, well, piss off, we don't want you. So I said, oh, well, the hell with you. He made a clear and defined choice. He went up and helped this guy with the books. And that was, took him to the car, and he actually had a coffee with this guy, and they actually became friends. 3 years later, this Asian guy, whatever accounting or whatever they were doing, he topped the class, and he had to give the speech at the graduation. And he said, I was going to kill myself. I was going to commit suicide. He said everything was, I had language problems. I was in a new country. I didn't have friends, and I was going to kill myself the next day. But he said if I did that, my mother would have to get all my books and things from my locker at the university, and I didn't want her to carry all that. So I was carrying all my books out. All our books out to the car, and so she wouldn't have to do anything, and then I was going to kill myself the next day. But he said I fell, and the books fell over, but this guy came, and he said he helped me with the books. We had a cup of coffee, became friends. He said, and I obviously didn't commit suicide the next day. And this guy was sitting there listening. He had no idea that the very fact that he helped this guy, he stopped the guy from killing himself.
Right, in his nature, he was inclined to do the right thing, and he did it.
Yes, but he did. But the guy said, come with us or piss off. Go. We don't want you.
It's like he had precognition.
He had a choice there. Right. And he said, no, I'm going to. So there was. I think there's a case of free will.
That's crazy. That's a really good story, actually. And what's weird is that at work sometimes, like say a customer comes in, and I'm about to. They're asking for something. I go, what do you know? It's right there.
Yeah.
We're already there. We both were supposed to meet there. And we were supposed to discuss it. And even that, I have my great-grandmother's from Yorkshire in England, right? I run into customers from Yorkshire. And why did I decide to ask them? They had an English accent, and one of them looked like he could be related, And so I just started talking about, oh, what part of England are you from? He's like, oh, well, we live over here now, but we're from Yorkshire. And I was like, wow, my great-grandmother's from Yorkshire. And I was like, I had to get your number. I was like, let me get your number. I'm going to call you back and find out all the information so I can follow up with you on it. We'll find out. Maybe we are related. Just stuff like that. That happens to me all the time, And even with that story, like sometimes I do something that I would normally never do, and then I end up having that kind of result from it. Yeah, maybe not necessarily that I stop someone from killing themselves. I may have done that. I don't know. I've never heard about it.
The point is you don't know. You don't know about some act that you've done either for or against.
Right. The smallest acts, too, can set the greatest things in motion.
Oh, totally.
And this reminds me, what you're saying right now reminds me of Epictetus with the Stoic philosophy, where he says, and he begins his manual for living by saying, of things, some are in our power and others are not. And he talks about how the things that aren't in our power are slavish, like our reputation. Our reputation's in the hands of other people's opinions.
That's right.
And then he talks about how death is only bad because we have a bad opinion of death.
Exactly.
And so that very, very much ties into the Stoic thinking. And I think that the way you basically put kind of the Stoic thought in your own words,
Well,
your own experience. I like that.
That's right.
Yeah. That's actually very interesting. I'm more inclined to think exactly like that. I actually use that, and it's great too. What I think is great about this book is it's like what? It's 24 pages. Okay. It's short. The Enchiridion. Can you see it?
Oh yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
Right. That's how short it is. He called it the Manual for Living. 24 pages, and it's all practical. The whole thing. And it tells you about how to control your opinions and how to, to not be grieved over something you're not in control over.
Yep.
Your property's not completely what you own and your reputation, things like that, and your body. You have free will to some degree with it, but the rest of it's in the hands of others, in the hands of fate. So there's certain things that are completely in your power. All your decisions are in your power, but your body, you can't, necessarily choose everything that happens to it. Like an earthquake could happen and a rock could fall on you. You didn't get to choose that. You were just there at that time. You chose to be there.
Well, a story relating to that is because this Henri, he said we do have control. There's certain things we do have control over.
Right.
And he said things we've lost. He said like the art of healing with the Cathars did, because we just got so much caught up in materialism and matter and everyday living that we've lost these. He called them everyone has it. He said sublimated talents. He said even animals have this particular powers of healing.
Right.
But anyway, so one of the things is also that if you really want something, you should basically ask for it, and in many cases you'll get it. Right. And it may not be what you you might get it, but it may not.
Oh yeah, I've learned, be very specific on what you ask.
So anyway,
especially when you're dealing with God, be very specific, because there's been times where I ask for certain things. I want to meet somebody that's like this. Oh, but then he doesn't control where they're from, or where they're at, or how you meet.
On New Year's night was the night that I normally do my asking for my guides, and and I never asked for much, like a decent car or a reliable car or something. But this particular time, I said, I like a girlfriend with really white skin and really great breasts.
Yeah.
3 months later, I had her.
Yeah. I've done that. It happens.
She was great, and she used to call them, "These are my babies," and I got exactly what I asked for. But I got a lot more than what I asked for. So,
good bargain. He must have been happy.
We had a great 3 years, but it was great when it was finished as well.
Yeah.
So now I just say, look, you know better than me. I'll leave it up to you, but I'll accept whatever I get. So
right. Yeah.
So I'm not copying out. I just think they're a bit smarter than I am. They know what's going on a bit more than me. Okay, I'll leave it up to you.
Right, and that's also the whole idea of guides too kind of trickles into some other even Orthodox thoughts, like the guardian angel, which is very similar. Right, or the shoulder angel, like in the Shepherd of Hermas.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
They're being there for your physical and your spiritual good.
Right. For the whole man. Also, okay, getting back into like some of the historical stuff with Cathars, what do you find to be significant about René Le Chateau? And just the whole, the debates between the Cathars and the Catholics, that whole time period when Catharism was basically right before the Inquisition and the leading up to the Crusade.
Yeah, that village was a crossroads in medieval times for heading for the Crusades and various things like that. It was a bit of a junction point. But from the Cathar point of view, I've read various books on it and information, but I don't see that much relating actually to Cathars or Catharism. There's a whole range of mountains and places around the Pyrenees that are far more relevant, both from the point of view of where the Cathars lived or various things that happened.
What do you find to be most relevant? What interested you the most?
Well, there was reference to the Catharism. Because people. I mean, this is a historical fact. People related to the Cathars. Pope Innocent III said, he said 90% of my clerics, 90% of my clergy are either Cathars or Cathar sympathizers. I mean, This is the Pope saying it. So,
wow, that many people in his clergy, huh?
Yeah, so they were taken over. So they were taking over because people liked their attitude. And the other thing was that at that particular time, you have to remember, the church used to tax people. They had to pay tithes. Right. And so these Cathars, they didn't cost anything. In fact, as against the Franciscans and the Dominicans, well, when they went to the Franciscans when they got like the Buddhists, they actually got food from the people, but the people they got the food from were already poor and didn't have much food. Well, the Cathars, they go in the field and they chop wood or they would harvest corn.
Right.
Yeah, and they work for their food.
Right, like Paul said to do.
Yeah, they actually work for their food. So there was a big difference between them. And also, when you fast 3 times a year, 40 days, they were all lean and thin and mean.
Right.
And in that respect, so there wasn't a portly one amongst them. Whereas most of the clergy, live well on good food.
Right, they're all fat bellied.
And they're getting taxes, and they're in beautiful houses. And of course, so just the very appearance of the two of them made the people go towards the common people. Another thing was, with Catharism, it was totally egalitarian. So,
and I imagine they had more attractive personalities too. They were more friendly and things like that. That had to have added to it. Personality goes a long way.
Well, they had that, and a lot of them were great orators. But a very big factor was that this is a feudal system where there was Pope, Cardinal, Archbishop, deacon, and then you had your lords and your barons and your knights and so forth, going right down to serfs and slaves, basically. So you had this feudal system. So state and church were feudal systems. Suddenly here, the Cathars come along and say, no, you're as good as me. We're all equal. You're no better than me. And
no favoritism.
But the aristocracy of the land, there was a lot of them in the Cathars.
Right.
And so they had no problem with equality. The Cathars could own land. Women could own land. It wasn't until after the Second World War that women in France could own land. So there's a gap, 600 years before they could again own land. And there was no difference between male and female. Almost not 50, but certainly very close to that, of the clergy were women.
Right. That reminds me of the Gospel of Thomas too, where they're talking about making the male female and all these other things, making them equal.
Equal. So, but the Cathars did this in practice. They put all this into practice, and so the people, and so it was disappearing. So Innocent started a war, which didn't work out too well. But there was a big battle, the Battle of Muret in 1213, and the Spanish knights came over under King Pedro, and they joined with the knights in the south of France, Toulouse, and all these areas, and there was this big battle. Unfortunately, they say that King Pedro, he was the Pope's hero because he was in the big battles and took Spain away from the Moors in Spain, and so he was the Pope's darling. But the people, the lords in the Cathar areas of Languedoc, they were under his allegiance. They had paid allegiance to him, so he was duty bound to protect them. So he protected them against these northern lights, the northern lords from north of Paris who came down, and it was just basically a land grab. But anyway, on the night of the battle, King Pedro, who was super competent, he had this good-looking woman, and he had a night of feasting and lovemaking. So he was feeling a bit seedy the next morning when he went into battle, and I believe he wasn't even wearing armor, and he was killed. And when he was killed, the Spanish soldiers lost the knights. They lost their heart, and it became a rout. And Simon de Montfort, he actually won the day. So that was after that. The military might of Languedoc was used to protect the Cathars because they were in that area, and they were happy with the Cathars. You were Catholic, Cathar, Jew. There was no big deal, or you weren't anything.
Yeah.
They were very. It was like a mini Renaissance committing at that time. So then, when that happened, so Pope Innocent had no recourse, but he commenced the Inquisition, and it took 100 years. But after 100 years of the Inquisition, there wasn't a Cathar. There was still
so it was just a power grab on his part because of the jealousy for those below him. He thought they wanted to take his spot and stuff like that.
Well,
that's what it sounds like.
The Catholic Church was imploding on itself at that particular time.
Right.
And so I can well see his point of view. So he was desperate, and he was
right. But he was interested in power, whereas, like you were saying, with unconditional love, it's not about power.
It was
love and
completely
power are two different things. Right. Exactly.
So, but the Catharism today is more back as a philosophy and a way of life rather than a religious.
Right.
Not that they had many doctrines anyway.
Right.
So,
So it's like a practical philosophy.
Yeah, and your Catharism can be
Yeah.
different to mine. There's basic concepts that you believe in, but the thing that separates Catharism from just Gnosticism or ancient Gnosticism, Jewish
Right.
Gnosticism, Christian Gnosticism, because you can be a Christian Gnostic or a Gnostic Christian, depending.
Right.
You can be a Gnostic and a Christian, or a Christian who's been influenced by. So they're already two different.
Right.
It gets quite convoluted in that area.
Right, yeah, because you see that like a Christian who's influenced by Gnosticism would be like Clement of Alexandria,
Yeah.
or Origen, or a Gnostic who's influenced by Christianity. You see that in some of the Nag Hammadi texts, where you can tell that they were more Christian and they were leaning towards.
Alcides of Athens. It was Carl Jung's guide.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he was a Gnostic who got him. He was who, I think the other way went round. So you had these variations, but there is an unmoneyed Gnosticism and there's an unmuddied Catharism,
right?
And so you can be a Gnostic and not a Cathar, but you can't be a Cathar and not a Gnostic.
Right. Exactly.
So the Cathar is just up one thing and just said, well, look, ultimately we're here to evolve to our higher selves, our higher consciousness. Well, what's that? When you get to the point where you don't fear anything, you don't worry about anything, and you love everybody and everything and everywhere, well, you're more or less getting towards it. It's a pretty tall order. It seems simple.
Right, yeah.
Easy to say, and I'm certainly not carrying it out, I mean, but it's something to aspire to. And
right, exactly.
If you don't get it right this lifetime, you're going to have other lifetimes. You don't get worked up over it.
Practice makes perfect.
Right.
So you keep practicing it. I practice it every day, and I know it's something to aspire to. It's not something I've reached, But I get closer to it every time.
Yeah, sure, and that means if someone
learning to tolerate people too that you really normally couldn't, especially in customer service. Learning to tolerate people. I can smile even in the midst of, and now I can. Back in the day, I could not. I would lose my cool. Now I can smile in the midst of when everything's going to crap,
What you were saying is also the essence of it, is the fact we have conflict. There's world. This person's invading that country. We've got civil wars. We've got things in Syria. We've got all these various things that are happening. There's strife going on in the world, and you're conscious of it, and you try and do something about it if you can. But with that strife, you personally, for yourself, just you're gaining that peace of mind and tranquility of soul. So you can you do what you can, but what you can't do, well, that's it, because the world's not going to be without strife. The very fact that people are after greed and power and various other things and are selfish and also feel disempowered.
So sometimes you're standing against the whole world. In a sense, when you've got this force coming against you, and some of the Gnostics saw that as, it's the Archons or whatever, however they want to externalize it, but they all kind of had the same view where it's like, okay, you've got all this coming up against you, it's like a big wave, and you've got to learn to take the wave, ride the wave, exactly,
enjoy the stuff,
right,
and enjoy celebrate your life.
Right, and it does build character. It builds your character, it builds your personality a lot too, and that will take you even further.
If you're enjoying your life and you're celebrating your life, well, you're not exactly harming anybody else.
Right, exactly.
You're grabbing for power. You're trying to climb the corporate ladder.
If anything, too, sometimes when you're doing that, you turn other people around that are having a bad day. Just like you talked about with that guy who decided not to go with his friend to coffee. He went with the guy that would drop the books.
Exactly.
He turned his life around and stopped him from committing suicide just out of a simple gesture,
and didn't realize it.
Right, didn't realize it until later. Yeah. What do you think about Constantine? I wanted to get to that too. What's your take on the whole Constantinian era in terms of Orthodoxy beginning to gradually grab for power?
Well, you wouldn't have Christianity. Christianity probably wouldn't exist without Constantine, because he was there was all the different emperors. There was Licentius, and then there was Constantine's father, who was the emperor. I mean, it makes it easy when your father's the emperor to become the emperor anyway. But Constantine, he one of the things he did do was the what was it, the actual term? he realized that with all the various religions and beliefs and philosophies within his empire, and he was an extremely practical man, and he realized you just can't have all these people fighting, and at that time the Christians and others were also illegal. They're out in the cold. So he made the Treaty
of Toleration, the Treaty of Milan.
But basically, it was for every religion. He said everybody entitled to their own beliefs. Now we don't even have that today. That's something that faded away. That's something that he had that was still more Gnostic persuaded than what, like, say, Theodosius had. That's right. He accept everybody, and one belief, from a lawful point of view. One belief it's kind of like Constantine was. He was on the plank. He was walking the plank, and Theodosius was the one that jumped off. He killed it for everybody. But so there's reasons behind that too. But so that allowed the Christians to come in, and for the first 228 years, no Christian killed another. But when Constantine gave Christians and others, I presume, lands and suddenly they had property. So suddenly they had power. They had property and power. Now it was you could kill, but only in protection for your property. So then killing started to become legal. But to that time, there was. And then by Augustine's time, you've got the Christians accepting just war, like Cicero's just war. Yeah, that's right. Right. So, but it moved from that point. But up to that point, Christians were pacifists, basically. Right. And I think I'm quite strong about pacifism, because I believe if all the people who are pacifists like me and you, we get all together and we kill all the other people who are not pacifists, well, then we'll have peace in the world. Right. Oh, yeah, definitely. Ironically enough, right? Sorry, James. Yeah. No, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I think the same way, but that's kind of one of the unfortunate sides of it. I've tried it. 3 wars I've tried. Doesn't work. Never works, right? It'll never work because there's too many people. And they keep breeding them. That's it. You see. But then you're in the same shoes as Constantine, right there, where he realized, well, that doesn't work, so let's tolerate him. He was an extremely practical man, and he did, but he wasn't very religious, because his wife, Helena, was very. She was a Christian, and then she went. How to the funny that her name is Helena too, right? Exactly. Right. And she gathered a lot of the famous relics that were available at the time, including the cross, including the nails that nailed Christ to the cross. Yeah. So anyway, Constantine put them in his helmet. Really? He had nailed them to his helmet for good luck, and he had a couple left over, so he put them into the bridle of his horse. So, so he's more of a superstitious man, which makes sense with his pagan sensibilities. When you go into battle, your battle horse is very important, so he wanted to give his battle horse an edge as well. And also, that's a symbol of power too. Would be among the Christians, is like, wow, he's got the nails of the cross, and oh wow, okay. Yeah, and he nailed it as well. He did nail it. But so anyway, the thing was that when he died, he was supposedly baptized, but it was by an Arian heretic. Oh, right. It was Eusebius of Nicomedia. He was a semi-Arian, supposedly. An Arian heretic at the time. So, and that's a good point too. Then how funny, even under Augustine, when Augustine was alive, Arians were ruling in Milan. Yeah, that's right. Right. And, well, I have a fair point. They say, if you're born, you're probably human. Right. Born, so that was their point. Right. And if you're and therefore you had a father and what have you. So anyhow, these areas I tend to keep a little bit away from, not because of offending anybody, but because how will we ever really know? Right. And as I quote Henry, he said, the Cathar perfecter, he said, look, don't get caught up in ancient facts and fictions. He said, just it's more how you're doing at the moment, how you're getting on, how you're feeling. Right. What's your take on dualism? Do you see dualism and things? And the only reason I bring that up is because it
such a popular subject with people, dualism. I personally don't believe in dualism at all. I don't it's not that I don't believe in it as a doctrine, it's just that I don't believe that the way it's defined, like they have this precise definition. It's like a doctrinal thing in a sense. I don't believe that, like in my mind it exists and it does not exist.
Well, we're probably on the same wavelength.
Right.
I'm against my dualism.
I don't like to confine myself to it.
My dualism is basically to do more. You can define it through more yin and yang, because
right.
What Christian dualism is, you've got a good God and you've got a bad devil, and they're isolated. They're there.
Right.
Yin and yang is about you've got night and day. As night recedes, day comes on. So it's within this, the whole yin and yang makes a unit. But within yang you've got yin, and within you've got yang, and it goes on and on.
Part of the same coin.
It goes out and it goes in, and we find that with our getting into physics with atom, it's got its positive and negatives, and that goes on and on.
Right.
It goes out, so it goes in ways. So this is, to me, and it's dynamic. In other words, more yin, you'll get more. For instance, if there's something happening in the world, well, we say, well, let's say 30 years ago, homosexuality, no one even discussed it. Now, various countries, New Zealand only a week or two ago, has homosexual marriage. So I'm not talking whether you're for or against it. I'm just saying how in many places, something we wouldn't even discuss 30 years ago has now become quite normal.
Yeah, it's all the rage and it's normal.
So as homosexuality becomes more yang, then the yin recedes. So, but you can never be totally yang or totally yin. So it's within our natures. So if we can evolve to our higher selves, our lesser baser selves will start to resolve, but we'll never get rid of it. So it's a dynamic thing. So, but
it's just like that wave. That wave travels around the world, then it goes, and then with the wind changes, the wave travels back.
Yeah, but it's not not dualistic, because the Christian dualism is you've got a good God and a bad God, or a good God and a devil. So this and they're fiction. Yeah.
The way you're saying it's the way I see it, actually.
It's just something.
You said it better than I could.
It's something that we it's a part of life, and you'll see it. You'll see it in politics. That one particular group will get in and they'll do so well, and then suddenly that'll recede and then the other group will come in. So it's you've got this constant toing and froing. But within every yang there's yin, and between, and so the Chinese would use it this way, because I became a Chinese herbalist at a later date and I retired. But how would they use it? If you gave someone a script for some particular disorder, Chinese, and that was for a yang disorder, or it was a very yang script. In other words, very warming script.
Right.
What you do in that is you'd also put a cooling herb in it. So the body, if it's too cooling, it can use that cooling herb. The body will work it out itself. If the person had, the best way to try to explain it is, if you go to the doctor, you say, "Oh, I've got a cold."
Right. Yeah, because we have that psychosomatic interaction as well.
Well, yeah.
Like
but
the mind influencing body, body influencing mind. I can see how
they. And you said you've got a cold, he's going to say, "Well, this Codral or cold pill or this or that and so forth." But if you went to a Chinese doctor, he'd say, "Oh," he'd work out if you've got a cold or hot cold.
Right.
And they're totally different things. If you've got a hot cold, your eyes are boiling and you're hot in the head. You've got a headache, and oh, gee, and you've got this hot cold and you're heating. So the herbs they would give you would be things like teas, mints. I won't say the Chinese names, but they're cooling herbs, huang lian. But they also put a bit of ginger in there.
Right.
So got yin.
I love ginger.
Okay. Yeah, but anyhow, so you wouldn't notice when you've tasted the other herbs, you wouldn't notice the ginger. Believe me. Right. So if you had a cold, that's making here. I'm shivering. I'm getting cold. I'm getting aches and pains here.
Right.
The Chinese would say that's an external invasion of pestilential devils.
Okay.
Nice way of putting it. But
Yeah, right.
I didn't have to say germs, but they worked it out 2,000 years ago.
Right, right.
So it's external invasion of pestilential devils.
Right, and you see that often too, is that the expressions just changed over time. The science, even though maybe it wasn't as explained, it was still just as practical.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you find that even with ancient Gnostic texts, or even, a lot of ancient texts, all kinds of them. You find things like, I find that all the time. Even like I was saying with the Nag Hammadi library, I look through it, I find old Gnostic things where I'm like, oh, they're talking about evolution, or they're talking about devolution, or they're talking about the change of the tides. There's all kinds of stuff like that in there.
I think you'll find these gems come up, but I think a lot of people they approach Gnosticism through these texts and they get confused.
Oh, yeah.
But
because they don't lock down on the concepts. That's why.
Well, that's right. But if you can approach Gnosticism and Catharism from its basics and say, oh, this is what it basically is,
Right. Rather than fundamentals, you look at basics.
Yeah. You got your basics. That's it. And from that, you can now view these the Gospel of Philip or whatever, or the Gospel of Thomas and so on. But you're looking at it from this standpoint. But if
and then you can actually get something out of it.
If you start there, you go, what the bloody hell is this? It's just confusion added to confusion.
Right.
Because so many different Gnostics had different viewpoints. But if you're going to think for yourself, you must end up with a different viewpoint.
Right, you have to.
Even though
what do you think of, because we were talking about the dualism, how did the Cathars view, because my co-host Alex, who couldn't be on tonight, he wanted to ask you about how did the Cathars view Rex Mundi, the Lord of the World? How did they view that? What was that concept for them?
Well, there's Cathars and Cathars and Cathars. What I mean by that is, if you go from Catharism and when it went from Europe and the Middle East and the Byzantine period, and they went over to Bulgaria and it developed, and it was grabbing from the Buddhists, it was grabbing from the Chinese, from Manu, and it was just evolving and it's grabbing all these different ideas, incorporating meditation, incorporating these things. And so Catharism is a very, very dynamic. It's like science, you're learning new knowledge, and you incorporate that knowledge into you're learning new herbs, new medicine, and you incorporate that into your system. So it's not a set, stuck system. It's evolving. Right,
exactly.
So when the Cathars first got to Europe, and that the Cathars by the very end, they had a very, very mystical system. So quite often the Cathars were saying one thing but believing something entirely different.
Okay, right.
Because of the circumstances, because the very fact you've got the inquisitorial people trying to get you in nail.
So maybe Rex Mundi caught on more when they were having the Inquisition going on or being persecuted.
And also Rex Mundi is the, and they were terrible times. You had disease like terrible diseases. People died at 40 and 50, even earlier. Most children died. 1 out of 3 lived. You had war after war after war, periods of famine. You had plagues. The world was a pretty horrible place.
So was Rex Mundi more like, in a way, was it more like the basically external circumstantial hardships and misfortunes personified?
Rex Mundi. These are the personification of Rex Mundi, materialism and so forth. And they felt so.
That's how I actually view the whole concept of the demiurge within other Gnostic systems. I actually see it that way, like how you're saying the Cathars see Rex Mundi. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, because
rather than seeing it as a personal being with this doctrine attached to it and all this stuff, and he's gonna do this and that. He's a he, and it's an it, and it's rather it's several things that are weighing down on people. That makes more sense.
It's a reflection of the times, a reflection of the world, but it was the opposite. But the other thing is that there was this beginning, the same as Lao Tzu says Tao. It's beyond having a name, so we call it Tao. It's a way of living. Because beyond our knowing. It's beyond human comprehension. So this is with the source. So ultimately, there's a return to the source. But the thing about the source, and especially to the Cathars, was that the source was the source of two things. They didn't know it, but they knew two things. They knew it was a source of unconditional love. Mm-hmm. Even though the world's a pretty nasty place, we've got to go through life after life after life to evolve. Right. And eventually we get to a certain level, we'll return to the source. They tried to fast track that by doing fasting and meditation, all these different things. And they tried to fast track their return to the source. Right. I've so caught up on that. But anyway, I've missed my point. Doesn't matter, James.
Okay. Well, we can move on. I think you said enough. What's your outlook on what God is and God is not? You know, but just how do you view God personally, and how did maybe what in based on like Cathar belief, how much did that influence your outlook on what God is and what God isn't? Maybe.
Oh, okay. This New York rabbi went to Israel, and this fundamentalist rabbi was saying, "Don't you believe in God?" And he said, "Yes, but the God I believe in isn't the God you believe in." So these are two Jews amongst themselves, the liberal,
which is actually very common to happen among Jews if you look at the Talmud.
Exactly. So, and the other thing was that I was, when I was young, if you ate meat on a Friday, I was born a Catholic in a Catholic family, and you went to hell. So because you ate meat on a Friday.
I was born Methodist. We had the same outlook, you know.
Oh, okay. But anyway, so I must have been on holidays because I was walking past a bread shop which made meat pies, and I was hungry, and it's a beautiful smell. I'll go and buy a pie. No, if I eat the pie, my God, and I die, I'll go to hell, burn in the flames forever and ever and ever. My God. And I thought, hang on, this is bloody stupid, you know. My mother.
Yeah, it is. It's retarded. Like, if you actually stop and think to yourself, I'm going to go to hell for eating a pie.
So that was, from that point onwards, I thought, no. But so I've always had this concept, if there is a God, it would have to be a loving God.
Right.
And so therefore, I could never equate. Well, I gave Christianity and I gave religion away at a fairly early age. When I remember going to war, and I never went to mass or this and that. So I obviously gave it away, because if I was in war and I thought, I better go to mass and be a good boy, because otherwise I might get killed. Didn't mind me. So
coming up, I had that being brought up. I had that same. I think that any kind of dualism that I ever experienced in my thinking was produced by the fact that I would go to church and they'd say one thing when I come home. My dad would teach me about a God that had unconditional love. He had a very Cathar outlook.
Yeah.
He was very Cathar, but he never would say, I'm a Cathar. I believe that he never talked about the Cathars. But he had spot on, like, all their beliefs, but he'd go to a church that had a completely opposing doctrine, you know. He'd teach me one thing at home, I'd get there and there'd be this conflict in my head. And I'm like, no. And what he would say was, I was struck with awe at the things that he would teach me, and then when I go there, I was just like, whatever, you know. That's nice.
There's dualism there.
Yeah, exactly.
One another, you know, but it's not fixed dualism. It's you know, because obviously is more one thing won over than the other as you became more.
I think that dualism is created in your head by doctrinalizing things, and then you've got these competing doctrines, rather than just saying, hey, look, this is an opinion. It's an appearance, is how a Stoic would look at it. This is an opinion, it's appearance. Don't get carried away by the opinion or the appearance. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So someone may look like this guy, he looks like he's a nice guy, and then you talk to him, he's an asshole. You're like, whoa, you know, I got carried away by this appearance, and now I got stuck into this, and now in my mind I'm like, oh, well, he was supposed to be nice, but he's a jerk, and you know. Exactly. Right. That kind of thinking, I think, is detrimental to people.
So it revolves around the fact that you know, not all mothers, but most mothers have unconditional love for the child that they help create.
Right.
So I could never work out, if a mother has that, how could a loving God
who created everything supposedly?
I didn't ask to be created. No one asked to be created. And how could so supposedly created me, and yet would damn me forever? So I couldn't that didn't work. So then, as I got into Gnosticism and Catharism, it all just clicked in, and because it fitted in with what because I mean, I don't want a God like that. I mean,
for me, it fit in with what I already believed, and what I had been led to believe was better.
Yeah.
I tend to discard, like I take beliefs and I go, oh, I like this one better. This one is more leaning towards the idea of an unconditional love with God, And I look at that and I say, oh, I'll discard this because this doesn't fit. It just doesn't fit into the pie, it's like a square peg in a round hole, and they're the same size. It doesn't really fit,
Exactly.
Right.
But also those books that Destiny of Souls and Journey of Souls. By this guy who hypnotized. What actually happened? A lot of people have hypnotized people for past lives. I've done sessions myself, take people back through meditation and for past lives, and not for them to say.
I've always wanted to do that. I've never got the chance to yet.
Well, I just facilitate the situation. I don't say that was a past life. That's up to you. You're the one who getting the experience.
Right.
You tell me. I'm just taking you along the journey.
Right. Exactly.
The journey. But anyway, with the Journey of Souls and that. This guy, he suddenly, this person, he was quite a good subject, and he said, look, you only died some 40, 50 years ago. What actually happened when you died? He said, I was above myself, and I looked down, and I was, normal thing. I waited around at my funeral, and then we started through the tunnel, and then I was met by my guide, and then they took me to where I had to review this lifetime, and then I went to my family, my actual family, and this is interesting. No one's done that. So he's done 15 years of this, all and everyone. And a lot of the people he actually had initially were people who actually had a bit of a problem, some psychological problem or psychiatric problem, or just had some disorder. And so that's why I wrote the second book, with other people who had nothing to do with disorders. But everybody, he said, went through the same procedure. They all review their body. He said some people were blown up, had no idea what was going on, and it took them sometimes days to sort out what the hell that they were actually dead. But he kept asking these people one after another, tell me about God, and they refused to talk. He said, why won't you? He said, why won't you discuss God? Oh, because you're human and you won't understand it. You humanize it, you personalize it.
Right,
you
exactly.
Can't. And so they refused. And then one person, in the two books, there's only one person once or twice, I think it is, that when they did refer to God, they referred to it as the source.
Right.
Which I thought was interesting. They never said God. You refused to use the word God.
Right.
And the one time they did do it, they used the source. And then,
right, because it is a loaded word.
Yeah, that's right.
It is a heavily loaded word, depending on what persuasion you come from.
This woman or this person, how can you describe God? Oh, I said, how do you describe this presence, this source?
Right.
Well, I said, some areas it's more powerful than others. He said, in this particular area, whatever it was, because it's another state of being. You learn, you study, you're there, the same here. And she said, there, I think it's a she, there you could feel that presence greater than any other area. He said, well, what can you describe it? She said, it's so difficult. She said, look, all I can say is it's like a mother humming to her child.
Right. It's more like a filling.
What a great description.
Right.
Like a mother, that's unconditional love. That's a mother humming her child. I thought, that's the best description I've ever heard of God. Or the source.
I think that even answers the question I asked you.
Okay.
Yeah, it does.
So it's unknown, but at the same time, it's loving. It's there for you.
Right.
And you know that ultimately you return. So that's
right.
The in-betweens, well,
it's almost like it's that euphoria that the guy you're talking about experienced when he left his body.
Yeah.
It's just that state of euphoria, but that's actually real euphoria rather than drug-produced euphoria.
Right.
Yeah,
so that pretty much covers it for me. God. Yeah.
One more thing. What's your take on, there's this talk of, it's a pretty, it's a pretty controversial subject in the scientific community, especially, in quantum physics and other things like that. And, in biology and various sciences, and that's the idea of the singularity. Have you heard of that? Like, have you heard of guys like Ray Kurzweil talking about man merging with machine and things like that? What do you think? What do you think about that? Because that was being talked about earlier when I first talked to you before we aired. When you were watching our little chat, where they were talking about merging with machine. Like, what do you think would be lost in the human condition? Like, what will we miss?
Well, there'll be. I mean, it's already happening, and it is happening. I mean, we're using various parts.
Right.
More and more. In fact, medicine hasn't really progressed at all that much. We've got no new antibiotics.
Right.
Where it has progressed is in the mechanical side.
Right.
Mechanical parts, mechanical this, mechanical that, mechanical this.
Right. Prosthetics, all this.
Hearing, they've even got connect up now so people can even see. So and these are all wonderful things. I mean, for someone who hasn't been able to see or lost their sight, someone who can't hear or lost their hearing or has never heard to get hearing, these are amazing and wonderful things. So it's a natural progression, but it's like genetic transference or GMOs. There's a point. That corn is suddenly it's a new product when you've got various things in it, like a new bacillus and various toxins in it, and you're actually creating virtually a new species, because there's nothing like within that species that's like this. So and it's bringing up, and what they find is, in that case, it's bringing up a whole range of diseases we've never even heard of before.
Right, because now you've got a whole new interaction with the whole new thing.
And not only that, there's one, it's called Bacillus thuringiensis, and this is the one that they put in corn, that when the bug eats it, it actually goes into the bug's stomach and bursts open their stomach, and the bug dies. Unfortunately, the bug now is becoming there's bugs that are surviving it, and there's bugs with a stronger resistance, so they're gaining this resistance. So it's not even working. But the problem is, in Canada, there was something like 90% or 94% of the women that they did a test on, and they had this particular bug in them, and it's in their gut. Now the thing is, what's happened? That bug is not that they've just eaten corn the day before. They have eaten GMOs before, and that is now in their gut and stays there, and it's creating all these particular problems. So what I'm trying to say is that there's a basically, this is a roundabout way of saying, there's a basic point that it's from human to machine, and one is, and I'd say at a basic level, we could say the divine spark or the soul. Because one of the things about Gnosticism and Catharism is that each divine spark is how do I put it? It's unique. It's a unique essence. It's the innermost core of our being. It's our character. It's our unique character. And there's only one of James. Now
exactly.
Your soul, your inner spark. That's it. It's your blueprint for eternity. You may be male, female. You might be gay, straight, or bisexual, different lifetimes. But that's your basic inner personality. That never changes.
Right.
I'm a soul of an artist and a man of action. Which, that no matter where. I could be a terrible woman like that, but that keeps going.
I've got the soul of the artist too.
So your innermost core, that never changes.
Right.
So that's why no matter what
I feel it never changes too. This morning when I got into work this morning, and one of my managers, she comes in the break room in the back, she's assigning me a new locker, and she goes, "What's going on? You're not the smiling guy you are every day." I was like, "Well, that's who I am when I get on the floor, but I'm always that person right here." Like, that is me. That's my real personality. I go, right now, I'm just tired.
Your eternal, unchanging individuality.
Right.
That doesn't matter. Now, there could be a point that we've got so many. There's a point where you've got the machine with so many human parts, and the machine with so many So the machine with so many human parts, and the human with so many machine parts.
Right.
So you're starting to cross borders, but
right.
whichever one your divine spark or your soul pops into. Now,
right.
whether that's basically a machine with a lot of human parts,
right.
but it's in that one, but it's left that one. It can't be in both.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Can't be in two.
Right.
Be one or the other. So they transferred so many of your human parts to this one. So your divine spark or your soul is popped over to that. So this one is now it's a zombie or dead or whatever. It's a walking. It has no soul. It has no. So I'd say that's the. So you can have two. You can have two, but only one. But you'll only have one with your soul or divine spark or.
Right.
So that's how I would look at it, because you can't have. Two, I mean, we talk about parallel universes and this and that, gnostically, and there's.
What do you think about parallel universes? That leads me to that question.
Well, there's nothing to say that there isn't universe after universe after universe.
Right.
There's nothing to say we didn't. Weren't Big Bang after Big Bang after Big Bang.
Right. Yeah. Why not? Right.
All we seem to be doing is discovering more and more and more and more.
Right.
But the one thing that Hitchens, I shouldn't say his name, but there's a number of people say, look, time or whatever started at the Big Bang. There was no such thing as time before the Big Bang.
Right.
And the Big Bang started from a single particle.
Right.
Well, I just find, in my unscientific mind, where did that one particle come from?
Right.
To create the Big Bang.
Right.
And the very fact there was a big particle, there must have been a time. So where was the time for that big particle to be in to have the Big Bang? So to me, time has just been there, so that particle, or maybe there's multiple worlds or multiple.
Or it could even be like, when you split a rock and you hit it, you split its atoms, it breaks apart. There was one particle that got split apart. Why not, right? And you see that in Gnosticism too, where they've got the idea of emanations. So when light emanates from a source, it's not part of the source anymore, but it was part of the source, and it's still made of the source.
Exactly.
But it left the source.
Well, that's right. Well, that's pure Gnosticism.
Right.
So to me,
so
in my limited capacity, there was always time.
Right.
And within that time, a particle is either there are particles, or a particle was created, and then hence the Big Bang or whatever. So therefore, people like Socrates, Plato, the greatest thinkers in they said the one thing they all have the similar point is there must have been a source for all this.
Okay, so we'll wrap it up with this one last question.
Okay.
What is your favorite thing about your own spirituality? What's your favorite thing about having the spirituality that you have? Is it the liberating factor of it, or is it the confidence factor? What does it give you that really makes you feel like it's all worth it? Experiencing it and finding it, it's a really hard question to phrase, but
well, firstly, I won't go into my age, but I was probably the youngest Australian to fight in the Korean War, and that was a long time ago.
Right.
I put my age up 4 years to go in the army. But the thing is, I don't carry around any rocks. I'm free, but my freedom is based on the fact that I don't fear anybody. I don't worry about anything. I do what I can when I can, but I certainly don't worry about it. And the other thing is, I'm just as delighted to live, but I'm just as delighted to die. I don't have any. I have peace of mind and tranquility of soul.
Right.
I just feel totally at peace within myself. Now, don't get me wrong. The other day, I was walking with my girlfriend, and someone tried to snatch her purse, and I thought she fell over. I turned, and this guy was running like hell, and I said, "If I catch you, I'll cut your bloody throat, mate." In the mouth. I'll smack him back. But that's just a natural reaction. But a few minutes later, I thought, oh, poor bastard, you know, he's obviously needs money for drugs or something like that.
Yeah.
And you just let it go and just to be a bit more careful next time. But it didn't upset my peace of mind. I don't lose any sleep over it. It didn't matter.
Right.
It's just another incident. So I think that's that total freedom to be able to live a full life and not. We may not reach our full potential, but you're not having fear and worry and gee.
And then again, who's to say what our full potential is anyway?
Well, that's right, but it's not hampering you. It's not hampering you.
Right, exactly.
I mean, my own inadequacy might hamper me, but it's not through worry or fear or this and that. And I have a I'm taking
even if it's not your full potential, it's adequate.
It's adequate, yeah. And also, if it's not working, does it really matter?
Right,
Really matter. And then suddenly,
why overthink it?
It gives you that you're at that point in life where you love your mistakes.
Right. Oh yeah, you actually, you know, the mistakes are actually good. I'm already at that point where I love my mistakes.
That's okay. I'm not Jesus Christ. I make mistakes.
Yeah.
You know that's, and also you're easier than other people because if you can put yourself in another person's shoes. Oh, well, I might have done the same thing if I was there.
Right.
But I think just I delight in being alive.
Right.
You know, I dance 3 or 4 nights a week.
Right.
Great.
That's good. So it gives you that sense of liberation, that sense of freedom.
And everything's working well.
Right. Yeah. That's good. Okay. Well, I think that about wraps it up. And maybe we'll we look forward to having you again in the future if you'd like to be on.
No worries.
All right.
It's been lovely to meet you and lovely to talk to you.
It was lovely talking to you too. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you for the interview. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.